Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the NAP Kickback. We're super excited to have everybody with us today, hopefully.
hmm
So I'm Miranda, and I'm joined by Stephen,
Hi, everybody.
and and we are the co-founders of the Nomadic Archivist Project. And the NAP Kickback, is a space that we created to hopefully open up some dialogue around
hmm
anything to do with archiving or saving cultural heritage or memory work,
hmm
um, or just conversations around Black history. And so this is meant to be just a casual space for
hmm
everyone. We definitely invite as much interaction and engagement as possible. So if you're out there and you have questions, or you have your own thoughts on things or your own advice on things, we welcome it. Definitely put it in the chat. And if
Please
you're
do.
here with us in the future, definitely put it in the comments section. We'd love to engage with you at a later date. So I think, we've done a few of these now. We're still getting our feet wet.
hmm
We're still, getting used to this space. We have a
hmm
podcast that we do with individuals around their
Yeah.
family stories, but it's pre-recorded, and
Edited.
we're doing edited, right?
Yeah.
We're interviewing folks, and so
hmm
it's a very different type of setup. So this is a little bit outside the box for us. So we're still learning it, and so we'd love to hear if anybody has any thoughts on a little bit more of like how we should develop this space, especially as we're in this fledgling stage.
hmm
That would be really welcomed. And it also dawned on Stephen and I that we haven't really talked about ourselves and the work that we
hmm
do or how we came to archiving. And so I think, for this first half of the half hour that we'll be in conversation with you today, we're gonna just do that. So I'm gonna hand the mic over to Stephen and just yeah, you take the mic,
I'm
Stephen.
handing the mic over to me. Miranda handed it to me, so that's here now. Yes, and
Yes.
so yeah, Miranda, thank you so much for reminding us that sometimes when we begin these conversations, particularly in this space, because we want it to be more casual, more open, and more free flowing, that we're not recreating in the telling. So I was intrigued by your question about how did I get started in archives? And it was really, for me, it started with my parents' wedding photograph. It's a black and white photograph taken in 1960, January 1960. And of course, you're looking at the photograph. It's my mom and my dad and my mother's sister Margie, and then there are three others that I've never met or never heard of, but I was obsessed with them as a kid. And so it's my mother's parents, Jerry and Mary, and then my grandmother Mary's mother Beulah. And it started there. So for me, archives and genealogy are really intertwined for me. I'm very interested in how families come together. When I met your mom, I was super excited because she's a genealogist and she also helped me find people in my family and records. So it was really powerful. But genealogy and archives are really connected to me. And eventually, over the years, I became more proficient in learning more about these people. I wanted to know how they lived, where they lived. My grandparents, Mary and Jerry, died within a year of my being born. So my granddad died like maybe 5 months after I was born, and then my grandmother died a year and a couple of months after I was born. So it was in 66 and 67. So I feel like they
Hmm.
met me, but I didn't officially meet them, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I am a nosy person by design. I'm just curious about what people think and what they do and why they do it. And going into archives really helped me think through history, genealogy, as I mentioned, art, politics, the economy. Like it helped me think more critically and more openly and more thoughtfully about how we arrange our lives. And so that that's basically in a nutshell. How did you get started in archives? And I already know, but tell the folks.
Well, I mean, and I've told this on different occasions. I don't know if I've told it here in the NAP kickback, but I feel like I have.
hmm
And that, like you said, genealogy was probably my entry point into thinking about archives.
hmm
And I don't know though if I really thought about it because I would, do a lot of research with my mom, as you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
genealogist, as a kid, but I never really thought about it in terms of something that I would do like every day or that like it's a profession or it's something that somebody intentionally has to do. It always
Right.
seemed kind of strange to me that all this would be in a building, right? And like these big,
Right.
we'd have to, and with genealogy too, you're like looking for like names and dates and places.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's super specific. And so, it's not like you're reading letters and reading somebody's
Right.
journal or, like reading the first draft of a manuscript of a
Mm-hmm.
writer, like a Langston Hughes or something like that. But um so, it was kind of like a disconnect in terms of like this is an archive and
Right.
the intentionality it took to keep materials together in a space
Mm-hmm.
and the effort that it would take to keep materials that were
Right.
relevant to me and my family and to my history
Mm-hmm.
in some building, right? And then somebody being able to pull it out for me so that I could search them for for the information I needed. So never
Mm-hmm.
really as a kid did it connect that
Okay.
yeah, the how profound actually it is that we have these documents today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think, it felt obviously like
it is
work
profound.
when I
Mm-hmm.
was doing it with my mom. Um,
Because you're a kid. What did you know? You were
right.
just
Right, because
being
it would
taken
be like
along.
summer vacation, and I'd be down south. I'm from New York, so I'd be, like in Mississippi somewhere, in, some sort of city archive
Yes, in the municipal archive trying to figure out something that your
or
mom is.
cemetery.
Oh, yeah, I love cemeteries. Yes. Great places to learn things. Yes, absolutely. And so it wasn't an automatic connection for you as a kid, but like, how did it grow into one? This is a question I actually asked myself later. But for you, how did it grow into a profession? How did it grow into a passion? You're very thoughtful and engaged when it comes to public memory and thinking about the different ways in which we can help other people think through how to maintain their archives, how to save things. And so, how did it become a profession?
Um, that's a good question because it
Hmm.
wasn't so for me, it wasn't going to be a profession, but I
Hmm.
think I was really interested in Black history and Black culture.
Hmm.
um, always. And so that's what I studied in school. But I didn't really know
Hmm.
what I would do with that knowledge, right?
Okay.
I didn't know
Yeah.
if I would go into education or do
Hmm.
something else with it. Um, so I feel like it happened by chance. I mean, I was studying in Washington, D.C., and I was doing an internship at the Library of Congress in the African and
Hmm.
Middle Eastern Reading Room.
Hmm.
And, I met and befriended a librarian there who sort of mentored me. And the reason why I was doing the internship was actually just to do research.
Okay.
I wasn't doing an internship as like an apprentice to being a librarian or an archivist.
Hmm. Hmm.
But as I was, in that space and learning more about what she did and
Mm.
learning more about the actual ecosystem that
Okay.
is out there to preserve, to, house and preserve and protect these materials, then I was interested. And then I
Hmm.
was like, oh, okay, this is actually a job. This is
Okay. Okay.
something that I might be interested in pairing my interests,
Hmm.
um, my intellectual interests with,
Hmm.
something that is meaningful.
That's really beautiful. So I love for you to name your mentor because I think it's important for us to cite the people that kind of helped us think through
Angel
our career.
Baptiste.
Yes. And I met Miss Baptiste when I was a when I was fellow, a junior fellow at the Library of Congress at the summer of 1996. So I did meet
Oh,
her once. Yes.
okay.
Yes.
So it's way before me.
Way before you. um, and so I'm glad that happened for you. For me, I wanted to sing and dance, and I'm only good at dancing, not great at singing. And so I found myself in school thinking, okay, well, I'll just I followed my best friend Carla, into into undergrad, because I was like, I had no intentions of going to college. I thought about going to the army. I was considering a lot of things. So when I entered the University of Toledo, I basically was like, okay, English. Okay, English writing. Okay, communications. Okay, communications, broadcasting. And I spent a lot of time in college still kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I thought I'd end up in communications. And in a way I am. But I remember I had a fellowship, I had a junior, it's not a junior fellowship, I had an internship at a local television station called WTOL in Toledo.
Mm.
And it was from September to December, it was just before I graduated. And I remember thinking, oh, I don't want to do this at all. I don't want to be a production assistant. I don't want to floor direct. I don't want to, at one point, populate the computer. This is the weather today or the sports number. I didn't want to do any of
Right.
that. I found it to be boring, and I found it to be um, ridiculous in a way, because I remember speaking to one of the anchors and she said, if we have a story that's really important without video and we have a story that's not that important with video, we're going to go with the video. And so I got a firsthand account of how news is shaped, and I didn't like it.
Hmm.
So the day I was supposed to be hired, my boss's wife went into labor. And so the interview was canceled. I ended up at the Toledo Lucas County Public Library. And at that point, I was volunteering at a different branch. And one of the heads recognized me and said, "What are you doing after college?" And she said, "Well, there's this position open at Mott Branch Library for a children's librarian." And before she could finish, I was already in human resources on the second floor. And it was so ridiculous because I told her, she said, "Do you have any experience with children?" I go, "Nope." "Any experience with children's literature?" "Nope." I said, "But if you hire me, I'll be the best children's librarian you ever had." And I think, what was it? 3 months later, 2 months later, I was hired. And so that began my work in libraries, went to
Mm.
graduate school in Clark Atlanta University, and became enchanted with archives. And so I was, did some work at the Robert Woodruff Public Library at the Special Collections um, division. And after I learned about the Schomburg, that was the only place I wanted to work. So I got my resume to the director, who got it to my former boss. And then 19 years and 3 months and 24 days later, I worked there and really began to understand the politics and the context of archives better.
Right.
So it was really the the best job I've ever had, besides the one I have with you now, Miranda, which is the Nomadic Archives Project. But so Schomburg really taught me the love of archives, the importance of archives, really knowing and being in community with archives. So it wasn't simply a thing where it's an extractive thing where you're just pulling things out of the community to
Right.
archive. No, this is a ongoing conversation with your community about saving Black culture. So
Right.
fascinating. It's a beautiful thing.
And yeah, I want to also say that Stephen and I met at the Schomburg Center for Research in Black
Yeah.
Culture when I started working there in 2010. And I think, what's interesting about our stories is that they're not abnormal. Like most people, I feel like
Right.
stumble upon this career. And this is always a thing that people ask me too. Like, how did you get into? It's like the number one question, like how did you get into archives?
Right.
Because it's not something it's not something you would like taught in school, like this is a career path. And
hmm
it's not something, everyone knows about libraries and librarians.
Everybody knows about
Yes, because
libraries
as a
and
kid,
books. Yeah.
you are in a library. And so whether you know
hmm
what the people in the library are doing, like who's a librarian, who's not, um,
Exactly.
you know something about it because you've been
hmm
there. It's a space you understand. But archives, most people have never stepped foot in an archive. So they can't conceive it. And even when I was there, I was saying I was doing research in archives, I was doing it from the space that was very
hmm
distant from the actual vault where all the materials were being kept. So it also just
hmm
felt a little bit, abstract and this
hmm
weird, like I don't really understand what's happening here, but um, and so it's kind of like the secret space. And I think, as
hmm
our it's kind of interesting to always put that into perspective, especially as we're thinking
hmm
about this idea of, erasure or
hmm
loss, or preservation, because a lot of it just comes from just understanding that these materials exist, in that it actually takes people and spaces and intentionality, um, and,
Resources.
and resources,
Hmm.
right, to preserve these materials. And so, I mean, I think that's like one of the things that we kind of forget,
Right. Hmm.
because it's so many people have just not had the opportunity to spend any real in-depth time in an archive to really
Hmm.
fully understand,
And
what happens in them.
no, really, and so you touched on something. So one of the things when people would say, I'd tell them I was an archivist, I'd say think of librarians to books, archivists to papers, records, organizing, this making available to the public, this kind of thing. And sometimes it would connect, sometimes it wouldn't. But also know that when you take someone to an archive, it helps them think it better because they're actually looking at materials in a box. They're looking at photographs. They're reviewing a film. They become more engaged with the process. So
Right.
that's one thing. And then another thing I want to mention though, even though folks maybe some people don't know about archives, but more and more people are beginning to know the importance of archives. They're starting archives, community archives, personal archives. They're beginning, the Academy picked up the word like maybe 15, 20 years ago and ran with it theoretically, but also they're more, not just English majors and historians are going into archives anymore. Other people are
Right.
going in because they see
Right.
materials that they could use. So on the one hand, I think archives and libraries haven't really advocated for themselves in a public way like this before, but I see that there's more consciousness, public consciousness around it. And erasure, because you get to the point where it's like, well, these are the things that are happening. And here's why it matters that you become much more vigilant and thoughtful about this moment. This
Right.
moment of erasure, because it's been erasure and Black culture has been going on since Black people got here. So
Right.
that's how it is. But all Black towns disappearing, land being snatched, books being banned, um, even just the act of not collecting the
Right.
community in which you serve, which is really important for us to consider how we fund public institutions that may or may not serve us and what that means. If you can't see parts of your lives in the local library, local archive, that needs to be questioned. So there,
Especially when the people in that area are supporting those institutions through their
absolutely, through
taxes.
taxes and other ways. And
Yeah.
so,
I want to say, I said, again, we're still learning, this space, and I know Stephen cannot see the chat. He can't see the people who are in it. So I just want to give a shout out to the people who have said hello.
hey,
Rob and Tanya and, Nadege Green.
it
And so
is.
I want to ask too, if people who are here with us, whether you've,
Hmm.
said hello or not, if you've had any experience, in archives, and if you
Hmm.
have, maybe like what your experience is, in
Hmm.
relationship to either working in an archive or just doing research in an archive, or like me
Started
being
an
dragged to an
archive.
archive with
Hmm.
your mother or parents, or yes, starting an archive. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah, just seeing like who's out there who, and if you haven't, that's fine too. Like, this is all about just talking about archives, and
Hmm.
yeah, we're
And
just
and
having
as you
fun.
generate those questions and that commentary, I want to read to you a definition of erasure. And that is, it refers to the practice of collective indifference and willful ignorance that renders certain people and groups invisible, ignoring their creation and contribution to the culture. The casualty of erasures constitute familiar communities. We all know them: women,
Mhm.
Black, Indigenous, and people of color, LGBTQ people, and of course, people who are poor. And so this is a direct way to whitewash something for public consumption. And right now, we notice we know this is happening either through the removal of someone's name from the public record or banning books, or as Miranda and I've been, Miranda's been more key in sort of like tracking defunded libraries, people being fired. These are all forms of erasure. And so I wanted to make sure we were on target today with that by bringing that up. But also, of course, we always have ways that you can combat erasure. Always. There's always a way to do this because people love to say we stand on the shoulders of other people, but yes, we do that, but we also have their tools. So we know that we can keep things going.
Right. And we've seen
Hmm.
what they've done. Tanya says that her understanding of an archive, what it was and what it wasn't, changed when she came to the Schomburg Center to see the Peary Thomas papers.
Yeah, yeah. Down these mean
So
streets. Yes, yes.
down these mean streets, yes, who Peary was a writer, a Puerto Rican writer from New York, I
Hmm.
think. But Tanya can. So Tanya, what changed once you saw the papers? Like, how did your understanding change? Um, Also, I want to say that the Center for Culture, Sexuality, and Spirituality is here with us.
Oh, that's freaking awesome. Hello, Dr. Harukuti, who is now stationed in Ghana, folks.
Who hopefully is also developing his own archive.
Hmm. Yes, absolutely. And while Tanya's answering, I just want to give you some thoughts briefly, tips on how to save Black cultural memory in times of erasure, which means at any time living in a culture where you're not the dominant culture or you are considered not a part of the main culture. So know that, of course, as I mentioned earlier, it's always happening in varying degrees. There's no one way to save Black culture. Just understand that you are a part of cultural history. You want to educate yourself. You want to know what's going on. Become media literate. Stay in touch with local efforts to save our culture inside and outside of institutions. If you can't think of something to do, somebody needs your money, someone needs your time, someone needs your intellect, someone needs your hugging. And more specifically, you can create oral histories of your family and save them on external hard drives and make copies of those and spread them around. You can also keep an eye out for cultural heritage that's being erased from the public or government record. Remember Harriet Tubman? Remember Jackie Robinson? These pages were scrubbed from the historical record and then they were reinstated after a few months. Interesting. You want to cite your sources? It may seem small, but theft is common when it comes to Black culture. It's really important. Cite your sources and be adamant. Um, and build community through memory work. We'll talk a little bit about memory work as well today. Tanya, have you responded to us, my beautiful Tanya?
Tanya says papers were written and typed by him, so you felt connected to him as a person. He became more than a name. It was amazing. Which
That's
I think
beautiful.
is the most impactful thing about archives, which is different from like reading a book that somebody has put together on somebody, like a biography.
Hmm.
Is that you're getting them in the rawest form.
Hmm.
And you're getting like their most intimate thoughts, especially if it's like a writer and you can like see their drafts, or see letters that they've written to people,
Hmm.
or notations that they've made. And so I feel the same way, that you just feel this real connection to the
Hmm.
people that whenever I'm archiving materials, I feel extremely connected to the
Hmm.
person
Yeah. Yeah.
or the entity or the organization that I'm working with.
Yeah.
And
It's a beautiful thing. Sorry. You're going to say something else?
no, that's it. Thanks, Tanya. Anybody
Thank you.
else?
Yes, please. Anyone else?
So what is memory work, Stephen? You touched on that. What do you
So,
think memory
as I
work
was
is?
mentioning earlier to a friend and also to you, that when people say archivist, as we just discussed, sometimes they may not know what that is or what you do. But I feel like memory worker is warmer because people do oral histories. They journal, they document their families or themselves or do art projects and so forth. And all of this is memory work feels like the larger term. And then you can more specifically be an archivist. You can train to be an archivist, or you can simply become an independent archivist where you are doing the work. But sometimes archivist is, like I said, a sort of a stand. Not it's intimidating to some folks because of the way we talk about it institutionally, which is a problem. But memory work feels like we've met so many wonderful people who are now archiving their dance records, and they're thinking about archives and how do you document something that's a living performance. Like they're becoming
Mm.
really imaginative with it. I think memory work is much more, can be much more imaginative in its approach to people, and not necessarily institutions, but it's, you can build your own institutions through memory work, and you can collaborate with other people who do all kinds of work just to preserve the memories of their community, the records and so forth. So memory work feels more warm and effusive than archivist at times.
But do you think in like your definition of memory work that
Yes. Hmm.
archivist fits like it's more of an all-inclusive term, or do you feel like like an archivist is somebody who has like the technical training to do certain things and memory work is more communal?
That's interesting. That's actually, I like the way you said that because if, but I also feel like based on, yes, archivists have that technical expertise, but then they're independent archivists who didn't go to school but still do the work, right? They learn to catalog, they learn to organize, they learn to do this. But memory work feels more like community, like our responsibility to our communities, right? To preserve community memory in a variety of ways. So it feels a lot more warmer, it feels less institutional.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. I kind of want to pose that question to other people and see what they think. So, Dr. Harukuti says things that come up for him when thinking about archives are the aspects of indigenous culture,
Hmm.
such as language that has fewer living speakers and dance, such
Hmm.
as Catherine Dunham's work. What do you think of that?
I think he's right. I think so. We often hear that Black people lost everything when they came over on the boat, right? But I heard a theorist talk once, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, say that what we brought were our memories. What we brought was our language. What we brought were things that are Africanisms in the way in which we cook, sing, take care of our kids, a number of things. So that those retentions are there, but we
Yes,
often
Christiana says that also food is an archive.
oh
You
yeah.
just hit on
No,
that too.
definitely. Food and foodways. Yeah.
Mhm.
The way we understand. So another genealogist who, strangely enough, was I met at a Mormon church. And he was given a presentation about the different ways people can do this recovery work around African retentions and American and other kinds of and Caribbean and other cultures. And that is through recipes, through storytelling, through memory, through the way people dress, through song. And he goes, he was inviting us to be a lot more imaginative about how we preserve our languages and the way we understand ourselves. Even the way your mom or dad talks, if they're
Yeah.
from, you know, the Delta versus up south, Chicago, Toledo, whatever, they they're bringing things with them. But that's learning how to listen differently than just sitting back and thinking it's all English because 24 hours a day, 25/8 days a week, we're being taught and we're being westernized. We're being taught to think and act a certain way and to disregard um, not other kinds of knowledges. So we have to fight against that. And then, like I said, learn how to listen better.
Right. Because I think also to your point, Stephen, like if you're so indoctrinated into that way of thinking and you miss things, you miss
Hmm.
the things that are right in front of you. And I think one of the things, like if some of the people are touching on and we've mentioned already is like how impactful certain stories are.
Hmm.
And if you're only thinking in these straight and narrow terms, or thinking based on like standards, or
Hmm.
thinking in, I don't know, some sort of box, then you miss all the things that
Hmm.
are outside of it. And
Hmm.
it's hard when we're in this culture to always
Hmm.
take ourselves out of it. And we were talking about training, archival training versus this
Hmm.
idea um, of not being traditionally trained, right?
Right.
And when you are trained, though, you are really taught to think a certain way and to
Of
accept
course.
things
Yeah.
a certain way. And Yeah, I mean, what does that do to us and what does that mean? I mean, I think that that's one of the reasons why we created the Nomadic Archivist Project was
Hmm.
so that we could be more boundaryless in the way that we thought
Hmm.
about things. Even the conversations we would have with people about preserving their legacies or thinking about their archival projects um, could change when we weren't under, the mandates of somebody's mission or somebody's whatever their
Hmm.
instructions. And so, yeah, I think about that a lot too, of living in this culture and all the things we miss because we do, because
Hmm.
we accept it. Um,
Hmm.
E
I get so
Hunt
excited.
says,
Hey, Eha. Hey,
huh?
Erica.
Octavia Butler, to my surprise, kept the envelopes and receipts. She jotted her thoughts. Many of her stories are about the co-presence of the past in the
Hmm.
contemporary moment.
Oh, I love that.
So I'm
Yeah.
so jealous, though, Erica, that you had a chance to go to to see Octavia Butler's archives. It's on my
At the
bucket list.
Bancroft Library. And by the way, I tried to
No,
get
it's
them
not
for
at
the
the
Schomburg.
Bancroft.
It's at the Bancroft.
No, it's out in California, and it's not
Go
the
on.
Bancroft.
It's the
I
Bancroft
don't
Library.
know. Maybe no, it's not. So we have to get Erica to
Erica, tell
to
us
help
where
us
the.
out. It's not at the Bancroft. It's at some weird like horticultural archive in Southern California.
I'm looking it up right now because
Okay, go ahead. It's the
because
Huntington.
the Huntington or Huntington.
Mhm.
Oh,
Huntington, not the Bancroft.
Miranda 1, Stevens 0. But at least I
Well, I
learned
couldn't come
something.
up with a name. I don't know why I couldn't come up with a name. Um,
That's the Bancroft. Yeah, thank you though. This is good. Thank you, Erica. And so, yeah, I tried to get those archives for the Schomburg, but she already made plans to have her work at the Huntington.
I guess they talked to her early on.
Hmm.
Maybe not early on in her career, but before, obviously before she passed.
Right.
They reached out to her, and that's why. I
Hmm.
don't think it was anything other than they showed interest,
Yeah,
which
sometimes
happens a
it's.
lot to
Hmm.
a lot of people. Like whoever shows interest,
Hmm.
instead of thinking about like how, like where the best place for those materials should be. And I
Hmm.
know there was a lot of backlash. There was a lot of politics around, where Octavia Butler's papers should have, where they should
Hmm.
have been homed,
Hmm.
because this archive is, not very accessible. We always think
Hmm.
about, like we do think about where archives live. They're always like in concert and conversation with other people
Always.
that,
Hmm.
right, that, so when somebody's doing, when somebody's researching, they can like look to see like who were the people that
They're contemporaries.
Octavia was,
Yeah.
right.
Hmm.
Other sci-fi writers and Black female writers, but and there's like a fee. I don't know. Maybe Erica can say. Maybe she doesn't want to say. But I think there's a fee. I think there's a lot. I think
I
it's
think there
difficult
is a
also
fee.
to
Yeah,
access those materials as well.
I'm hoping
So I
that
know
there
there was
is
a
a.
lot of
Yeah.
backlash of why it went to the Huntington, but I know they have
Hmm.
processed them and made a lot of
Hmm.
things digital and had an exhibit, and so that's wonderful.
Yeah, I like what you said about context because what I notice, excuse me, what I notice, excuse me, at the Schomburg, for example, because there were so many writers who were writing during the 50s and 60s and 70s who knew each other, who collaborated with one another. James Baldwin, Ruby Dean I.C. Davis, Maya Angelou, um, Julian Mayfield, uh, just a number, Tom Feelings. These people knew each other. So you can sit and Lorraine Hansberry, so you can sit with her papers and wonder who was she in conversation with? Where was she going, in terms of
Yeah.
theater, as she was building her chops in theater? She was going to James Baldwin plays. She was critiquing
Yeah.
those plays. And so these kinds of conversations are always happening in archives. Archives are not dead. They're not inert. They're living. They're just waiting for you to come and have a conversation with them.
Right.
Really. And so it's powerful, but we and that's why knowledge is so powerful. We We love an archivist by the name of Marion Stokes, who was a Black woman based in Philadelphia who started the largest news archives in existence. And it started with her recording the nightly news because she felt that Black people weren't getting the full story of something. They would get a piece, and then one night the story would change the next night, or just disappear. So she came into some money through her investments through Apple. She got in on early, and she began having multiple VHS machines recording the news 24 hours a day. And when CNN came along, she started recording that. Now that archive is at the Internet Archive, and it's being processed out in California. But she took it upon herself to do it. She was an independent archivist. One of her goals was to open up an institution where folks can come in and see how news was created, how it changed over time. And one of my favorite quotes from her is, "Information enhances my freedom." And
Mhm.
so I want to leave that with y'all and put that in your hearts as well, because it's a powerful thing to have knowledge and to share knowledge and to be responsible for the knowledge of your communities when you're doing this archiving work, and your family and your friends, you know. So,
Yeah. And the people who come after us, our descendants. So
mhm,
Dr. Hurukuti says settler colonialism and imperialism requires the colonized to lose memory so that they are more
mhm,
easily internalize the colonizer's stories, narrative, times in a sense of reality. And I also feel like, I mean, this is
mhm,
true and what you're talking about with Marion Stokes. And, I wonder if other people feel the same way. Like I can't watch or listen to the news anymore. I'm always trying to, figure out
mm,
what's happening out there in the world, but I can't, it's, at this point in where we're at now in the US, I should say, because
mhm,
not everybody who's listening here today or hopefully in the future is from the US. But in the US, everything is being whitewashed. The
mhm,
news. And, I was actually surprised when I saw a really long write up on Asada Shakur, um, sadly, who passed away over the weekend. Um, because I see nothing of Black history, Black culture, or anything. I don't even see Black writers, as much in mainstream papers.
mhm,
Obviously, in
mhm.
Black newspapers, it's a little different, but um,
Well, the great thing
yeah,
about
there
the internet is that you can go different places to cobble together, different stories and get good information that you can check and see, okay,
and
how
that's
true
what
is
Marion
this?
was doing
Hmm. And she
in
she
her
thought
time.
largely about what we were being fed, you know. And Haru's right. It's a process. You're supposed to just be a subject, right? It reminds me of a quote that Toni Morrison. There's a documentary on her, not The Pieces That I Am, that came out in 2019. This is an older documentary when Beloved came out in 1987, and
Mm.
she's talking about her research for a character that one of the characters had a bit on, and she goes, "What's this bit thing? What does this mean?" She was doing some research in this woman's archive, and the bit was a tongue. It was an apparatus where you screwed it onto someone's face, and the metal tongue would push down your tongue, and it was supposed to
Hmm.
prevent you from eating, right? And so at the end of the day, they would just rip it out your mouth, right? And so she just found this horrifying. And she goes, little by little, atom by atom, slavery was supposed to destroy you. And then she sits back in that Toni Morrison way and goes, but it didn't.
Hmm.
And that stayed with me from 1987. And I hesitate to say the word resilience. I think we fill up. I think we're more absorbing machines, and at times we need, obviously, to relieve things through ritual and laughter and crying and, dismantling things to feel, to be present, to exercise that energy, because we live hand in hand with the archive right now. We do. We live contemporaneously with the past and the present. And archives remind us of what has happened before. We also know that archives at times can't tell us. I mean, they're shaped in a way for public consumption, when someone might go, "Oh, they don't really need to know that, so I'm going to take that out." And it's like, it's whatever helps to tell the story, you know. And to your point about Octavia Butler's papers, if you're paying to go see them, that's a barrier. that's a problem because this woman was writing some really profound things that we need to always go back, read her books, and check her archives for that wonderful knowledge. So, but yeah,
Well, somebody needs to fact check me if it was paying or if it's just some sort of registration.
I've heard that before though, that it was. And even registration, it might be $5 of processing fee. It's like, no, it should be free. And I know at least two other instances, two public figures. One I was talking about this weekend to a friend who thought his work would be available at a university to the public, and it's not. And he was mad. So he
Oh,
lived to find out about how many layers of security that a person, just a regular average Joe, needed to go and see his papers. And I had a conversation with him before he donated those papers to this university. And I don't understand why he didn't understand the word public, the public,
Oh,
I think it
yes.
was prestige, actually, though. That's what I think.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about archives too, and this is what always holds me, is that, well, this idea of like things being lost or things not being in the archives,
Hmm.
or this idea of erasure, like right, what's happening right now, is that a lot of, whether it's materials or people's memories or the things that we pass down, I mean, they do persist.
Hmm.
And even if something doesn't come up or turn up, like, I'm always searching for things that I haven't been able to find yet. But even if it doesn't come up in my lifetime,
Hmm.
I think about like 50 years from now or 100 years from now of it being found or
Hmm.
turning up.
Hmm.
Because a lot of times I'll think, oh, something just doesn't exist because I haven't found it yet. I have
Right.
looked in the archives and I know what I'm doing, maybe, and I still can't find it, but that doesn't mean that it's not there. And I think the
Absolutely.
assumption too for a lot of people is to think, okay, so if I can't find it, it's not there and it wasn't
Hmm.
saved. But a lot of times these things, maybe they're not in an institution, maybe they're in somebody's attic
Right.
or in somebody's
Right.
basement, or and at some point that that truth will come out.
Hmm.
So that's what's always exciting to me too, is not just
Hmm.
of what's found and being preserved today, but also what's what's going to turn up that's not in our lifetimes, that somebody
Absolutely.
else will get to experience.
I'd love that. And that's a lot. So that's a chunk of the collections that are at the Schomburg right now. Somebody
Right.
saved a stack of not just Ebony magazines, which are very easy to get, but you know,
Crazy.
The Crisis or Opportunity or some of these other early magazines or books or photographs or something. It felt like after a while that, or to me, one of the things I thought about was that somebody was waiting for an institution to exist, and then they kept things, they weren't thinking about it maybe in that way, but there are boxes of things that someone said somebody's going to need this stuff one day. And I have some stories that I want to knit together about actual stories that people weren't, like I said, weren't necessarily thinking that way, but they were thinking this mattered, right? And so someone should have access to it. And so they kept it. And so I, even in the digital age, I still have those feelings about people holding on to things,
Yes.
external hard drives, and then also it's really the phenomenal. I don't know if I'm using the word right. I won't even use it. Then I'll say the body is archive is what Eric and I were talking about today. And the stories, I interviewed my aunt who was, I think she was 83 at the time. And she was my great aunt. She is my great aunt. And she remembered people's names, nicknames, birth and death dates, if they smoked or not, how many kids they had, did they move from Louisiana to wherever. She remembered the kind of financial, like, the kinds of, this is in Louisiana, a small town where how people
Hmm.
made money. People had to migrate to go live, right? There were only a few industries that people could actually live and make a living with. And so I having those oral histories and being able to share them with my family means everything to me.
Right.
Everything. And so I will continue to do that kind of work. But we have stories inside of us. It's really about making time to tell someone, to record them, document them in some kind of way.
Right. So we are getting ready to, I think, close up shop for the night. But if there's anything, so I think, what are we going to talk about in the next time? Because we're going to try to do this every Tuesday. And so if there's anything that
Every other Tuesday.
every other Tuesday, thank you. Every other Tuesday, like 6 p.m. If there's things that people want to talk about or subjects that we should, sorry, my dog is, I don't know if you can hear this. My dog is drinking water right next to me. So all I can hear is him like
slurp, slurp, slurp. Yeah.
Slurping it up. Right. But if there's things that people are interested in talking about or, interested in having us do a show about, definitely let us know, put in the chat. I also want to say before we leave that Erica did correct me that the library is free. So anybody who's going out to the Huntington, that the library is free to go to. And I don't know, Stephen, what else do we got for everybody today? Definitely, if you liked today's conversation, definitely give us a heart and
tell people.
Share it. Yeah. We're just getting started, so we're figuring this out, but we just want to hope to have more conversations to come.
Absolutely. And we will be sharing some resources on our site for you to explore the different kinds of erasure that are happening, but also some empowering things as well that I started out earlier with. So it's a much longer list about ways that we can preserve Black culture. And we invite you to tell us about yours, tell us what you're doing, and you're never doing this alone. Hopefully you're doing it within community.
Right. And if Stephen, have you ever done an interview or anything about like how you got started in archives?
A couple times in different, some longer pieces. There's a piece by Stephen Booth called Ancestor and Descendant, and it's a conversation between he and I that was published on Lost and Capture, a website in Chicago run by Tempest Hazel. Yeah. So, but there are other times I need to actually do more conversations around it, just so that it's, like you said, it's, most people come to this career. Sometimes it's a second career. Sometimes it's, I don't want to teach or be a historian. I want to be an archivist. So I think it's always good to have the stories out there, our different stories.
So I'll link that too in the description afterwards for anybody who's interested in on this path of archives. I think that's interesting. And again, that's something that people are always wondering about. But definitely appreciate all of you for
thank you
for your contributions, for your chats. Yes, big hearts. It's great. And yeah, we hope to see you again in the future.
Yes, please come back.